When we're studying consumer theory, the goal is to understand consumers' choices in terms of what they want to consume. To understand consumers' choices, we need to know the consumer's budget constraints, but we also need to understand what consumers' preferences are. So this chapter is all about consumer preferences. What are consumer preferences? Essentially, consumers' preferences refer to consumers' tastes. They're context independent, meaning that preferences are strictly specific to the individual. So basically, an individual has a certain taste for different goods, and that's what's going to define their preferences. Importantly, preferences are defined regardless of prices and regardless of income. It basically says that if, let's say, you prefer apples over pears, it's just a matter of taste. It has nothing to do with the price of apples and pears, and it has nothing to do with your income. It's really just about how consumers prefer one good over another. We're going to make three important assumptions regarding preferences. The first assumption is that preferences are consistent. Consistency basically means that they make sense, they're logical. So let's say that we have three different goods. There's a good that's called X, a good that's called Y, and a good that's called Z. If the consumer prefers good X over good Y, and if the consumer prefers good Y over good Z, then transitivity means that the consumer is going to prefer good X over good Z. So if X is preferred to Y and Y is preferred to Z, then X is preferred to Z. That property is called transitivity. And it's a very important property in economics. So we're going to assume that preferences are transitive. The second assumption we're going to make is that consumer satisfaction tends to increase when the consumption of a good increases. This is the property called non-satiety, meaning more is always better. If you can have more of the good, well, you're always going to prefer having more of a given good. The third assumption we're going to make is that preferences define what we're going to call a complete order. A complete order means that we can compare and we can rank any couple of baskets of goods. So if we can compare any couple of baskets of goods, that means we can say, let's say that we have two different baskets of goods. We can say that basket 1 is preferred over basket 2, or basket 2 is preferred over basket 1. We can also say that the consumer is indifferent between basket 1 and basket 2. If we're talking about indifferences, well, we're going to define a very important property of consumer theory, which are indifference curves. When we're looking at two alternative choices and we're saying that the consumer is indifferent, we can draw indifference curves on a graph. This is what we're going to do in this next slide. All right, let's go back to our example of two goods. We have on the x-axis, we have good C. On the y-axis, there's good B. Remember that C was for concert tickets and B referred to a number of books. And we're going to make an assumption that a given consumer has tastes such that he is indifferent between having two concert tickets, three books. That's a first basket of good. And he's going to be indifferent between this basket of good and a second basket of good, which is consisting in 5 concert tickets and 1 book. So here we have two baskets of goods. The first basket is P1, in which there are 2 concert tickets and 3 books. The second basket of good is P2, in which there are 5 concert tickets and 1 book. And we're going to assume the consumer is indifferent between both baskets of goods. We can draw more combinations of books and concerts for which the consumer is indifferent. So here we're going to draw P3 and P4. And if we connect all of these points, well, we're going to draw what is called an indifference curve. So an indifference curve is a combination of all the baskets of goods, which essentially give the same value to the consumer.